All right, I want to welcome everybody. If you want to come on in from the gallery and find a seat. It's wonderful to see you all again. I saw many of you last night. Thanks for being willing to come back for another day. Most of you know, but I'm Travis Tigert, the CEO at the United States Anti-Doping Agency, and it's just a real honor and a privilege for me on behalf of the USADA board and our entire team of staffers, many of whom are here, to welcome you all. We've got a number of people here in person, and we thank you for coming long distances to be here for this important meeting and conference, as well as, I'm looking for the camera, we've got, I think, about 1,500, and for the non-math people in the room like myself, that's 1,500 from around the world, literally, who have joined us by virtual capabilities. So we're just really honored and thrilled. I think that number alone is a real testament to the importance of this topic, and frankly, how, I think I can say how desperate many of us are to learn and engage more on this particular topic about mental health and well-being for all populations, but particularly young athletes. And it's why we're so honored at USADA through our TrueSport program to be able to host this conference. At USADA, we exist to fight against the win-at-all-cost culture. We're here to ensure an equal and level playing field for all athletes. But as well, we're here to protect healthy competition because we know sport and its promise can do wonderful things when done the right way for young kids to ensure that they become amazing adults and parents, whether or not they ultimately make it to the elite level like the athletes you see here on the podium today or not. And it's exactly why a few months ago, we heard the need and saw the need for this topic and decided to do something about it. So thank you to all the athletes who were willing to come share their stories. I think you're going to find them incredibly inspiring. Thank you as well to the panelists of experts that you're going to hear later this morning. Each and every one of them deserves a gold medal for the job that they do on a daily basis to help address this need within our communities and with their own individual communities. With that, I want to introduce Dr. Jen Royer, who's going to come up and tell you a little bit more about what's in store for the conference, what the day looks like, and how excited we are, again, to be here. So with that, Dr. Jen Royer, many of you all know, but leads our TrueSport team, and it's through her leadership, and frankly starts with her heart and her character and concern and compassion to identify the need and execute in an amazing way with her wonderful team that has brought us all here together to hopefully have really robust discussions about not only becoming aware of these issues, but the path forward and how we can do even more to be successful in ensuring sport delivers on its promise in this way to young athletes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jen Royer. Thanks, Jen.
Not quite as tall as Travis. Thank you very much. Thank you again. I'd like to reiterate his welcome. We're so grateful to have you here, and also for those of us those of you who are joining us virtually, thank you so much for investing your valuable time to this vital conversation. It is something that has struck a chord for so many of us who interact with young athletes. I think anecdotally, if you interact with kids at all, you know that this is a difficult time. We're seeing challenges for people's mental health, mental well-being at a scale that we have never seen before. And that's, of course, there's a number of contributing factors. That's something our experts will do a great job of addressing today. But really, our job today is to recognize the challenge, to acknowledge that it is something our young people are struggling with, and try to find solutions. Because those of us who interact with young people, who lead young people, are looking to help build better leaders for tomorrow. We work a lot with elite athletes at USADA, and you're going to get the gift of an opportunity to listen to some really high-performing, phenomenal athletes today. But their journey didn't start the moment they competed for an Olympic team or competed for a national record. Their journey started the first time they stepped onto a soccer pitch. You know that moment when you see little ones out there and they're chasing a ball around and they have no idea which goal they're headed to? It starts there. Their anxieties, their stressors, the things that they're learning to master through sport happens in that moment. And we have an opportunity as leaders in this space to take a step forward, to say, yes, we're willing to have these difficult conversations. We're willing to model that. We're willing to say to young people, it's okay to raise your hand and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Because just like we would recognize a physical difficulty, they have an injury. They need to train harder. They got a laziness problem. Whatever it is, we're willing to step in as coaches, as sport administrators, as educators, as parents, and teach them the skills they need to master that. We need to do the same for their mental and emotional well-being. And this is the moment to do it. I think Travis did a great job of acknowledging the challenge. For those of you who haven't seen, the Surgeon General, the timing couldn't be better for this discussion, recently put out a mental health advisory acknowledging that something like 1 in 3 high school students in America has prolonged, sustained feelings of sadness and hopelessness. That's a staggering statistic. If you have multiple children in your own home, there's a solid chance, better than average, that at least one of them is dealing with some of these challenges. It's time for us as the adults in their lives to step up, lead, help them build solutions, not disempower them, but empower them to be stronger, to be more resilient. We're not necessarily talking about being afraid of taking on the hard things. We're not talking about giving kids a pass on challenging themselves. We're talking about giving them the tools to do it well and to do it with resilience and strength and to feel great about that process. So the path for us today, we are going to have 4 separate sessions today, as you're probably already aware. We're going to start with our athlete panel. We're really excited about these folks. They've been really gracious with their time. We're going to follow that discussion. We really intentionally started by identifying the problem with our athlete discussion. We're going to follow that up with really this high-level discussion around culture. We looked at this as concentric circles getting closer and closer to the student athlete in the center. So culture, what do we need at an ideological level to change this conversation for next generation of great athletes and great community leaders? The second discussion is going to be about how do we build communities that support that culture? What do family structures look like? What do team structures look like? What do school communities look like that support these discussions? And then finally, at the center of that is the capacity that our young people need to be successful here. What are the tools, the skill sets? Our wrap-up panel is going to do a great job of giving you practical, pragmatic next steps forward. That's the trajectory for the day. I'm super excited to get it kicked off. Why us? Why is this the moment? Because these kids need us. There is a human on the other side of every one of these conversations. There's a young person waiting for us to develop solutions that make their lives better. And it starts right here. So I am so pleased to introduce our moderator for the first panel, our very own Allison Wagner, who is in and of her own right a phenomenal athlete. She's an Olympic swimmer, former Olympic swimmer. Do we say former? I feel like that's a faux pas on my part. She's a phenomenal athlete. She goes really fast in the water. And so we're so grateful that she's here to kind of kick off this discussion. She's going to help us understand the athlete perspective. We are going to hear from these phenomenal athletes, their journeys, their experiences, and the wisdom they're going to share with us will set the tone for the rest of the day. Thank you so much. Take it away, Allison.
Thanks, Jen. So I'm going to introduce our athlete panelists today that have been so gracious to be here with us today. I'll start with Gracie Gold. She is a figure skating Olympic bronze medalist and 2-time national champion. She's currently training for the Olympic trials in January. And she set a precedent in 2017 by opening up publicly about your struggles with mental health and stating that you needed to step away from training and competition, which undoubtedly inspired and supported many people in your community and beyond. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Noah Lyles, Olympic bronze medalist in track and field. I thought it was pretty neat that you won the Jesse Owens Award in 2018 for the most outstanding track athlete of the year. You're also the co-founder of the Lyles Brothers Sports Foundation, which is created to empower youth through the advancement of health, including mental health. So thank you for your work and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, and no problem.
And finally, Deja Young-Craddock, Paralympic track and field athlete, 3-time Paralympic medalist, fresh off of Tokyo, along with Noah. So welcome back, and thank you for what you did there, representing our country. Deja is an advocate for mental health and has been very open in sharing her struggles, and you've contributed to the environment of the discussion greatly, and we are for sure in store for some pearls of wisdom to be spent from you today, so thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to start this conversation.
So I'd like to start off by hearing from each of you what inspired you to be passionate on the topic of mental health. Deja, if you wouldn't mind starting.
Okay, awesome. So I didn't start my professional career until 2015. I was in college at the time, full-time student. I was pre-med at the time. I was struggling. I went to my first World Championships, went through it, And then I was behind in classes, I was behind in everything, training, everything, and I started going down a little bit. And then in 2016, trials for the Rio Games came along, and I was struggling. I told my coach, hey, I need help. And they were like, well, everything seems fine. You're a professional athlete, you're a full-time student, books are paid for, school is paid for, everything is paid for, so I don't understand what you're struggling with. And unfortunately, I had a suicide attempt in May of 2016, and I struggled. It was hard. I ended up being admitted for about 72 hours and stayed an extra 2 days at the institution, and I got the help that I needed, and I realized that I had an option. I had an option to either just sit back and just let that engulf me, or I had the option to get better, and that's what I did. I ended up going to Rio in 2016 and did great there, and then in 2017, I decided to come out with my story because I needed to be the person I needed when I was struggling. I wanted to be able to help prevent what was going on, and I always said if I could save a life, that would mean more to me than a medal. And so I've been speaking out ever since, just because this conversation needs to be had and not be had before something unfortunately happened to me, or something bad happened. So that's why I started my conversation about mental health.
Thank you, Deja. Noah, we can move down the line, so you can go next.
Yeah, I'd say I was born into the mental health conversation. My mom, who's actually in the audience with my brother, we are a fully therapied out family. And a lot of people might ask, what the heck does that mean? Well, at the age of 6, I was already in play therapy. My parents put me in therapy just to make sure that everything was okay, going right. We'd play games, and they'd ask me a few questions, and at that time it was just playing games to me. Then later in my life, of course, I got diagnosed with ADD and dyslexia, and school became a huge challenge for me. And I went back into therapy, except it was a little more serious. It was more of trying to understand how to handle the challenge of you think different, and you're in a program that is not advised for people who think like you. And just being able to navigate and try to use the skills that they taught me in everyday life. And that was, probably the next middle step of my, ever-growing mental conversation. And of course, we get to high school. My parents had gotten divorced. I believe it hit all of us, all three of, me, my brother, and my sister differently. And I remember my mom really, really started coming down on mental health on us. The conversations that we would have as a family, we'd have actual family meetings. And in these family meetings, we would discuss things that either bothered each other or that we felt that somebody was, not picking up the slack that they needed to, or if they needed help, we were there to have a conversation about, okay, let's, we know that you're struggling, so we'll help you in this area so you can focus on this. These were all different ways that we integrated mental health into our lives. And then, of course, when we got into sports, I connected with my mom's old sports therapist in college, and she became my sports therapist for life. We're still very close. I think I actually have a session with her on Sunday. And even after that, I was like, okay, I have the sports aspect, but I now need a life aspect. And that's when, again, I borrowed my mom's resources and used her therapist again, because she's actually known me since I was born. So, I thought, who would be a better therapist than somebody who would know me for life? And, again, I still use her today. And so not only do I have, therapy in sports and therapy in life, I also have my family where mental health is talked about constantly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Gracie, if you could share a little bit what inspired your passion on the topic of mental health.
Inspired my passion, was so light and joyful, and it was a series of dark events that did lead me to where I am now. But it really started in spring of 2016. I was 4th at the World Championships again. So 3-time fourth place finisher. And that was really hard for me. And there was a lot of build up to that event, and I had built it up to be like just the most important thing I could ever do in life was like win this World Championships. It was in Boston, like where I was born, where I qualified for 2014, and the US Women's had a 9-year-long medal drought. And so was I going to break that? And I had won the short program, and I cracked under that pressure. And I had not had good skates before, but that was the first time I felt like I really didn't deliver when there was a lot of pressure on me, and that was hard. And it was hard after because I felt I didn't really get any validation. They're like, oh, because I couldn't get back into it. I couldn't get back into training. I wasn't excited for the next season. I was doing a show tour in the spring, and just the light had kind of gone out with me, and I wasn't for the first time like obsessed with skating. Like the day-to-day training of skating was like my favorite part. Competing with yourself, oh, I did this on Monday, like now we're gonna do this on Tuesday and on Wednesday. And I just felt like a piece was missing, and I didn't know what to do with that, and I was invalidated a lot because, yeah, I guess I was throwing. A lot of people thought I was just making a big stink out of being fourth place. Like, oh, do you know how many people would wish that they were fourth place, Gracie? But I didn't know at the time that was kind of going to start this like downward spiral, so to speak. And I ended up by the next fall, after terrible season and just a hot mess. And I ended up in a mental health facility, in a treatment facility for 45 days. And I was severely depressed. I had almost become a little agoraphobic, like even leaving my apartment to do anything. Like I remember distinctly looking out the window thinking like, does the world really need more of me? Like it seems like everyone's fine out there without me. Wasn't skating, wasn't training, wasn't really doing a lot. And I had a lot of suicidal ideation, and I ended up in a treatment facility. And I guess what started, what inspired my passion for mental health is when I went to put out a press release citing my mental health issues. There was a little bit of pushback, and some people thought, oh, like, what if you said that you were injured? Because that's more palatable in the sports world. Like if an Olympian is physically injured, it's the best doctors, best treatment in the world. Everyone rushes to your aid. But if there's some mental issues, not just athletes, but other people, they tend to take a step back. And then they oftentimes they invalidate it, but they're like, oh, like, what do you have to be depressed about? Like, what do you have to be depressed about? Like, you're like an Olympian, you have all this stuff going for you, as if like I wasn't like depressed enough. Like I didn't know that you had to qualify to be clinically depressed. Like I didn't go through the trials for that, I guess. Didn't check the boxes. But yeah, with that pushback, I thought, no, like I'm not injured. Like I'm thinking about, checking out early. Like this is not, who am I making this palatable or more comfortable for? And it really was, my story made a huge impact in the skating world because no one had ever really come forward on such a scale. And I just realized like the lack of really just even knowledge or understanding or resources available to Olympians or elite athletes, with mental health issues. That there was everything you could ever want for any injury, but as soon as there was something wrong in your brain, I was floundering. There was not a lot to do. And yeah, now we're here and we're helping out the next generation, and thanks for having me.
Well, thank you all for being so open, because that's something that really helps. Being open, and especially your profile of athlete, the stage you've reached, and you can really impact a lot of people by, and I'm sure you all know this, but by being open and discussing this topic, so thank you. Gracie, you mentioned pressure. That's something I wanted to ask all of you about. There's pressures at all levels of sport, as you all know. Pressures to be a good teammate, pressures to please your parents, pressure to please your coach, your sport organization, et cetera, et cetera. What have you found to help support you in dealing with those pressures in terms of mental health now? For both of you, if you want to start, Gracie, since you mentioned the pressures, what have you found now to help you deal with that in terms of taking care of your mental health in regards to pressure?
The sport of figure skating has even like some more unique pressures than maybe some other sports that I have found. Like one of the big ones that started really when I was quite young is that there is an aesthetic component to figure skating, as everyone knows. So it is a lean body sport, and there is a certain look to a figure skater. Like if everyone closed their eyes and pictured what does an Olympic figure skater look like, there's not a lot of variety or diversity typically in that mental image. And when I was like middle school, high school, and like prepubescent and then going through puberty, like that's a difficult time to have a bunch of people commenting on what your body looks like and, trying to cut weight during like those years. That's kind of where it wasn't just pressure about doing well, but it was how I looked like while I was doing it, right? Because skating is, the whole design is to do the hardest things possible while making it look effortless in a very small dress in front of millions of people while you're in like high school or like college, which, yikes. So, looking back, that's where some of the extra pressures, it wasn't just how well I did like my triplets, triple toe, but how effortless did I make it look and how aesthetically like did I look while doing it. So there's all these extra layers that I felt, and just the regular pressures of any competitive sport like was extremely difficult. And in the younger generation, like most people wouldn't go back. If you like really peaked in high school, might go back and relive your high school years, right? But most people wouldn't. I wouldn't. And like, I would never go back and relive middle school. You never hear someone saying, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, like
Worst days of your life.
best, right? And those are the years that you're starting to lay the groundwork and lay track down on your pursuit to the, elite sport. And as I've gotten older, just really trying to separate the pressures that I'm putting on myself, that other people are putting on me, and, what just kind of maybe comes with the territory of elite sport, and just kind of breaking those down. Because when you're getting pressure from all sides, it's too much, like just to simply implode. Like, when we're scored in figure skating, there actually isn't anything on our judges sheet that says, you don't have to put your weight, right? You don't have to put like how old you are, or like, there's no like body shape that's like the best for skating. It's the one that's best for how you can do like, whatever body you have that can do a triple axel is perfect as far as I think anyone is concerned. But yeah, as I've gotten older, just working through and understanding, which one of those I'm just putting on myself, like building myself up. What's like other people's stuff? Like other people's pressure is like none of my concern. Mm-hmm. And just having like a good support system in place, and love that you have a therapy family. I think that's great. Most people don't, and I think we all know people that could benefit from like lifelong relationship with therapy. I think that's amazing. I wish I had more of that growing up. And I wish more people did. I wish all the kids and all the people watching here today to be able to have those resources available, I think is so awesome. Mm-hmm. And to use them as well is great.
Yeah, that's great advice. Noah, you mentioned being exposed to therapy early on. Were there any things that you remember learning at that early stage of your time in sport, or even now, that helped you deal with pressures in terms of taking care of your mental health?
Yeah, of course, and I'm actually gonna piggyback off of you, and I appreciate you for really giving love to our family. Even though as much work as we do, it never seems like there's enough, because mental health is a lifelong journey. It doesn't just stop when sports stops. It doesn't stop when you get out of high school. It doesn't stop when you get out of middle school, which I agree is the worst period of your life by far. But it's just continuing to learn skills. A lot of skills that I learned when I was younger, it definitely had to be patience was definitely one of them. Mm-hmm. Not like things aren't going to come when you want them all the time. There were a ton of times where I was I was very fast when I came into high school, and I was winning. I remember I was, breaking a lot of age group records. I was like the fastest kid that has been seen in like Virginia in a long time. And I remember I didn't win states my freshman year, and I was disappointed, and I didn't win nationals, and I was disappointed, but I ended up making the world youth team, and I was like, oh, that's crazy. A kid who didn't win states or or nationals is still on the world youth championship team and racing against the world. Like, in perspective, the things that I wanted didn't come, but with patience and still persevering through all that, I still got to, get to this great achievement. And also just carrying that through, my whole career, just learning that even though I might not see the results that I'm looking for, which is a huge pressure, not, especially going through this 2021 season where the Olympics gets postponed, and now you're like, shoot, I had kind of built every year off of a last year base, and not having that base anymore means I'm almost starting from scratch. And you're like, you're waiting for those times to hit that you were hitting last year, and you're like, well, 2 years ago or last year I was at this point, and now I'm not even close, and you're over here like looking like, is it gonna come? Am I gonna hit it? Like, this is scary. It's like, hey God, if you want to stop joking around now, we can start. We can start. And I got to a point where I was running really fast, and I just knew I was gonna PR and everything, and we were at the Olympics, and it didn't hit. And I was really hurt. I'm still very hurt. But after letting go of the pressures of, people, bragging about me on social media, expecting me to do things when they want to, having to go through a whole bunch of press releases and everybody saying, oh, you're just going to be the next Usain Bolt, knowing that in 2 years, I know they're going to be calling some other kid the next Usain Bolt. That's being able to finally let go of that, and then go 2 weeks later and almost run another PR and re-solidify myself as the fastest man in the event. I'm like, that was a lot of pressure that I couldn't even understand when I was in it, how much it was actually affecting me. And even though I went through that pressure, it could be way worse, because I do have a great team. I have my family, I have all my therapists, and I have a lot of people around me who want to see me succeed, and will come up to me and say, hey, are you okay? And I am a person where I will say, yeah, I'm struggling. So I am very thankful for those people who are around me, and being able to learn from mistakes or from experiences. Those are the things that actually improve my mental state each time that I'm put to a test.
That's a really great point, focusing on learning and how that contributes to maintaining mental health. Thank you. Deja, is there anything you'd like to share about pressure specifically and how that's interfaced with your mental health?
Oh yeah, definitely. I have to agree with Noah. The pressures of trying to be the best and then just like having that all on you. When I came onto the scene of Paralympics, I came out of nowhere, and then being this double gold medalist, and then having all that pressure of like, you have to be this person, and then coming out in press saying, oh, America's sweetheart, perfect Patty, like being that pressure of trying to be perfect was so hard on me. And it took a toll on me, and that pressure, I felt like if I wasn't successful, then I'm worthless. And so that success, like that balance really hit really hard. In 2019, it hit really hard. It was like, okay, I've been a world champion, all of this, world record holder, and then I lost the world record in 2019. And I felt like, okay, well now I'm not worth as much as I was before. And so trying to balance out that and with the pressure was really, really hard. And my coach was just like, why do you feel this pressure? And I was like, well, because of A, B, C, D through Z. And he was like, no, if you stop today, you're still an amazing person. You're still a college graduate. You're still a good daughter. You're still a good friend. Everything under the sun, you're still this amazing person. And so having to balance that out and find that happy like medium was really, really hard. But I think I kind of found it in 2021. It was kind of one of those things I went out and I was like, okay, it is what it is at this point, and whatever happens, happens. And kind of just having fun with it again was really hard to find, but having fun within the sport really saved me from downfalling in that pressure with my mental health.
I'm so glad your coach was able to help support your frame of mind and your perspective. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I would love to hear if anybody's willing to share about your regimen in terms of mental health. You know, you all have a regimen in terms of your physical training. Do you have a regimen that you employ for your mental health, and what does that look like if you're comfortable sharing? Deja, would you mind going first?
Yeah, I would say going shopping would be like my regimen, but going to Lululemon is common. Just going there and spending a whole bunch of money makes me feel better. But no, I think just really taking it in and taking time for myself and separating myself and just really just enjoying the moment. If that either means going to try a new restaurant or treating myself to just time alone, journaling, going out for a walk. I have everything set. When I was in the mental institution, they always said, make your bed every single day. And if you don't get anything done within that day, at least you made your bed and you hit one goal at least. And so making my bed has become something in my regimen every single day. Even if it's 11 o'clock at night, I'm gonna make my bed and then get right back into it, just so I say, hey, I got something done. So being able to have like a routine has been a lot to me. So 2020 really hurt because I didn't have a routine. I'd get out of bed, go sit on the couch, and then go get back into bed, just because there was not much for me to do. I couldn't leave the house, couldn't really do anything. So getting back onto a schedule and journaling, making my bed, having morning coffee, all of that just really helped with my routine and get back into the swing of things.
That's really important to hear, you know, routine and also achieving a goal, even if it's a really tiny one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
No, do you have any regimen that you would like to share?
Yeah, of course I have the obvious ones. I make appointments with my therapists, both of them, to make sure that we just keep up to date, because the more consistent you are, you know, the more things we can catch in the moment instead of having it all build up. But just like Deja said, I have a lot of hobbies outside of track. Shopping is definitely one of my big ones. Let's just say my closet is definitely a designer store. On top of that, I make music. I'm an artist. So I am constantly creating different things. I have little sprees where I'll start painting or drawing random things. So a few years ago, when I first got out of high school, I started painting shoes, and then I started painting like roller skates. Then I started painting skateboards. And now all the art just kind of, you know, is surrounded all in my house. Of course, I have ended up taking those hobbies and making them like, you know, full on things that I think I could be doing after I'm done with track. Recently, I actually just created an LLC for my music, and I'm like, yo, this is something I have a huge passion in that I would love to keep, you know, putting more and more energy over time. Of course, we started the nonprofit, the Lyles Brothers Sports Foundation, and with that, that's, you know, a whole thing. It's a whole idea in itself that by talking more about mental health, it helps you start understanding things. I've been in tons of panels where I will start talking about mental health, and then I'll come into an epiphany on the spot and then share it with other people, and then my mom will come up and say, "Yeah, I didn't know that." Yeah, I didn't know it either until a few minutes ago. But I would say that's around my regimen of how I just keep things fluid in my thinking of my mental side.
Yeah, it's a really simple but important thing to do, to identify hobbies and all the activities that bring you joy and to include them in your routine. That's one takeaway that I think that's really helpful to hear. Gracie, do you have a regimen now in terms of maintaining your mental health that you could share?
Yeah, and speaking of like epiphanies, like on the spot, happens to me all the time. What I also should have included in the last question about like pressures is that my parents named me Gracie Gold and let me go into competitive figure skating. So having the last name Gold in figure skating, an Olympic sport, just like another. Yeah, there's a lot of good puns in there, lots of great headlines. But yeah, so your name's Gracie Gold? Did you get gold? So funny. And a lot of people, I get this a lot. A lot of people will, even at like some high profile events, will introduce me as like the Olympic champion. And I just know that it's like Gracie, like it just is assumed. And I'm always like, oh, gold got bronze in 2014, not gold. Yeah, but just another unique pressure again. It's a good name, but like,
I hear you. I understand
they did give me a stage name from the start. But as far as kind of I'm a routine person. Because I always thought of myself as easygoing for some reason, but I've actually never been relaxed like the day of my life. I don't know why. I think I'm like relaxed. I'm like easygoing, like a people pleaser. I need a routine and structure, and even a slight adjustment to that can bother me, and definitely I'm off-centered, I'm off balance, mentally not as well as we were before the change. But yeah, my daily routine is Monday through Friday, like just literally the same. Like wake up at the same time, coffee at the same time, same Dunkin' drive-through. Every person working there knows my order. Skate the same time, do everything the same on the same schedule, which is really great for being well-trained. However, it can be a lot, like just living in the daily grind. So things like shopping, and I actually got into, especially during quarantine, interior decorating related painting, not like the creative kinds, like just the walls all one color. But, and that's kind of been a nice thing, like my landlord knows about this, but like little upgrades to my apartment and stuff like that has been like creating a nice space for me to relax in. And I like what you said about making your bed, so at least like you've made a bed. It was an important concept for me to understand. I grew up in a very like, 100% or like nothing. So if you're not gonna do something 100%, like don't even do it. Like that very all or nothing mentality. But even if you don't do 100% of your like self-care, even if you only do 20%, even if you just shower, brush your teeth, you're still 100% better off than if you didn't do it at all. And I found that in my training as well. Like if one day it's not going well or I have something else going on, knowing that today, like I might not do my 100% or what I perceive to be my 100%. Maybe it's just 40% of what I'm capable. But if that's the best that I can do that day, I'm 100% better off than if I didn't even lace up my skates for that session, or if I didn't even try to go to the gym or what have you. And so kind of having that mentality has been really helpful. And patience, not just with my skating and my success, but just with myself in general. Instant gratification, I love it, as does everybody, but good things do take time. And patience with myself and letting myself fail. There is a gift, The Gift of Skin Knees was this book I read a long time ago, but and it's really like for parents, but there is a gift in like letting yourself fail and being gentle with yourself about it. And that has been such a gift that I've given myself, actually.
That's, really helpful to hear. And I can really relate to the point around sometimes a little is a lot, and making sure to give yourself room for that. Deja, you mentioned your coach helped you on one occasion help you manage your perspective. I was wondering if you all could share how people around you, through your time in sport, coach, parents, friends, teammates, have helped you in terms of supporting your mental health and what that looked like. Deja, if you want to start, if you have anything else to share on that topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a complete spaz. I agree with Gracie. I don't know what relaxing is. My mom always made the joke that whenever I sat still for too long, I'd always get a cold, or my body would just be like, what are you doing? You need to be busy 24/7. So my coach, who's also an Olympian, we have a lot in common, so we butt heads a lot, but he's really been patient. And he taught me how to be gentle with myself and to just let the process happen. If I'm going to be successful, I'm going to be successful. If I'm not going to be successful, that's okay. It's not going to define who I am or what's going to happen. And both of my parents were very, very, very supportive. Like I said, this past year has been very hard for me, and I wanted to be done. And my coach was basically told me and said, hey, if you don't want to compete this year, you don't have to. I will not be mad at you. You can walk away. You can get to the games in Tokyo and be like, you don't want to do this. And I'd be like, okay, we'll get you a flight home. And I was like, whoa, that meant a lot to me, knowing that my coach understood where I was coming from. And it was really big for me because my coach comes from a Brazilian team, a Brazilian coach, and he saw the mistakes that his coach made with him, which was huge. And he understood that the things that his coach did was wrong, so he wanted to be better. And so I think that was really important, because I see through a lot of coaches that they keep those same habits. Whatever they were taught, they're gonna keep the exact same thing. So I think it's really important to break those barriers and get through those past experiences that everyone has gone through, that trauma that my coach went through, he didn't want to put his athletes through. And so my parents also recognize that the trauma that they went through as a child or as kids competing at a high level, they wanted to make sure that I didn't go through the same thing. So being able to balance that out and make sure that I was happy and healthy, and every single time I would come home and my parents would say, hey, are you happy? Are you enjoying what you're doing? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, if you're not enjoying what you're doing and if you're not having fun anymore, then why do it? And so being able to have those outlets and be able to speak on it and be able to be open and transparent with everything that I was going through really, really helped me get through a lot of things.
Yeah, I mentioned pearls of wisdom coming out of this panel, but I think we're more boulders of wisdom. No, is there anything that you would like to share on this topic in terms of how people have supported you along the way?
Yeah, in terms of support, I've definitely, I feel, talked the most about the team that I have. If we're going into one specific person, it would probably be my mom. Her dealing with depression and anxiety through her life, and then seeing it in me, I think that was a very big trigger for her to make sure that I didn't have to go through the struggles that she did. And she would always say, I'm giving you this information for free that I had to pay a lot of money for and spend a lot of time on. And I'm like, oh, well, that's nice to know. I don't got to pay for this. But it all helped, and it's very nice to have. And I think it works really well between us, because I'm not going to lie, me and my mom are the exact same person. I'm just the male version. So we are very connected. Like, the way we think, the way we operate is very, very, similar. So for me, it was very easy to connect to what she was saying, because I, would feel those things, and she would tell me stories about how she would feel that. And I, automatically hearing that, I was like, well, shoot, I feel like I can get through it a little bit more. Not all the time, because sometimes you feel that, your issues are your issues that, you have to get through, but you can still learn things from, other people. And I'm very big on not having to go through a hard time if I can learn it the easy way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Being open to learning about challenges of mental health through the experiences of others.
Yeah.
Gracie, is there anything you would like to share on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think the support system for an athlete is huge. It's just like of the most importance. And if you have a flower seed, like you can't just toss it in sawdust in like a cup and like expect like an orchid to bloom. So the same with, athletes and young athletes, the environment in which the flower starts to grow in will determine how it blooms, how beautifully it blooms and such things. And if the flower isn't blooming, it's not everyone's first thing is like, oh, that's just bad seed. You would check the environment, like what is the lighting, the soil, like are we overwatering it, underwatering it, like is there a different environment or can we make this environment more hospitable so that, this athlete or, this flower can bloom to its fullest. And I think, home life, like siblings, parents, and I think coaches play a huge role. Like I really saw my coaches more than my parents at times. And I think that they can be put in a tricky role because, like my two coaches right now are like, they're skating coaches. And, they do have to play, they are a caregiver in a way to like all of their students and to me. And so they have to be a friend, a caregiver, and they're not like psychologists and like they're not, their craft is coaching whatever sport. And I do think that there is a need for I think coaches should have a resource and like there should be psychologists, like not just for athletes, but for the coaches, because that is a really tricky position to put them in. And anytime that I've been really struggling, and I've confided in my coaches, now that I look back, I'm like, ooh, that was a lot to put on their plate, it just, ooh, that was a lot. And they've always shown up for me, which I think is just like a testament to people that become coaches. The power that they have, as we've seen, can be used for good or evil, but I have been so fortunate in my coaches, especially, I call them my boys. I have two coaches right now, and they've just been like everything to me, and there's like on and off the ice, but their support is like why I'm here and like why I'm like still competing at all. And, it's been fundamental in growing up, the support that I got from most, not all, of my coaches is incredible, and I can also know this because anytime that I feel like my parents haven't been supportive or I've had a bad coach, it has been detrimental. Like those were the times where I was like going to hang up my skates because, that environment that I found myself in felt so toxic. So the support system of an athlete and a young athlete, right? Because they're training at an elite level. They also are going to high school, which sucks. And, everything is like, their identity is changing all the time. And if the coach or the trainer and, the parents aren't supportive, of course there's going to be mental health struggles. Like that is a recipe for a mental unwellness.
Yeah, you mentioned your coaches showing up for you. Do you mean like being a good listener? Do you mean being present or just consistently communicating that they're there to be supportive of you?
I would say all of the above. Listening and, validating my feelings and emotions and not trying to just immediately fix it, I think is nice because I think I call them, like my mom just have a tendency to be a fixer, like just an immediate fix, which can sometimes feel like, they're trying to help where they're like, oh, let's make this better as soon as possible. But sometimes it feels like, no, you're not hearing me. Like you're not validating, which like I experienced a lot. Like when I got fourth for like the third or fourth time, oh, well, you were fourth. Like, what do you have to complain about? Or, you were second at nationals instead of first. Like, what's the disappointment? So I mean, coaches that, they're like, no, I see you and I hear you, not just as an athlete, but as a human. And like what you're experiencing as both a skater and as a person has just been really just incredible and has been really fundamental in, the last several years of my life.
Thank you for that. I wanted to address the topic of social media. How has navigating social media been for you in terms of managing your own mental health? And what advice could you share with the young athletes and everybody else in the audience? Deja, would you mind starting?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of social media. My agent hates it because I need to post, I need to do all these extra things, and I don't like doing it, so I try to put it on someone else. But yeah, social media is really big. It's become kids' lives. It's at the palm of their hand, right there, 24/7. And it's kind of sad just because kids see social media and they see all these perfect people. They see the happy moments only. They see the perfect bodies. They see the perfect meals. They see all of these things, and it's really hard because you're like, oh man, I want to have that body. How are they achieving that while I'm sitting here trying my hardest and I'm not getting that body? When behind the scenes, they don't see the hardships that they're going through or the angles that they're taking the pictures of. And so I recently just turned off my social media, just turned off the notifications, so I'll just get on whenever I want to get on. And so I think it's really important for the youth to know that social media isn't real. What you see in a picture, yes, a picture can speak 1,000 words, but at the same time, you never know what the backstory is. Some of my favorite videos to watch on TikTok are seeing girls or guys go back through their TikTok and was like, let me tell the real story behind this picture. Behind this picture, I just got broken up with, or I've been having an eating disorder, or all these different kind of factors with behind that, and just showing the real side of social media. And social media has taken such a huge factor. Sometimes you gotta take social media with a grain of salt. I am an adult now, and sometimes I have to remind myself hey, sometimes you can take a picture, put your back foot back, twist a little bit, your Instagram model. Perfect picture right there. And I have to remind myself that, hey, you don't know what's going on in this picture or what happened 10 minutes before this picture. And so having the youth understand that you can't take social media serious, you can't let it consume you, and stepping away is okay. Taking a break. There's been so many things going on in the world recently, and just because you're taking a break doesn't mean you don't care. It's for your own mental health. So being able to just separate those two is so incredibly important.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Noah, do you have any advice regarding social media?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Deja, where a lot of people in general, not just youth, but everybody kind of sees their social media as their identity. And that can be very stressful when you are put into a situation where you thought that it was going well, and all of a sudden your identity on social media is, turning bad. I am someone who I heavily invest in my social media. It's half of how I get a lot of my business. I have a lot of sponsors, and I can say that half of it is from how well I perform, and the other half is how well I manage my social media. And going into probably the year 2020 and 2021, it became very stressful, not just from trying to divert the different identities, but how much you were seeing, especially when you're hearing all these news about the Olympics being postponed, you're hearing black people getting killed in the streets more often, and it's one thing to know that it's happening, but it's another thing to see it. And gosh, that really hits really hard, and it almost puts you in a disbelief state that you can't even watch anymore. And just like Deja, I had to come off of social media in quite a few periods of time. I'm now at the point where I don't actually have Instagram and Twitter in my home screen. I have to literally search it to make it harder for me to get to it. But I know that social media is a tool, and just like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. And I tend to use it, or try to use it to the best of my ability for good and not let it consume me. I try to use it as a message to other people. If I want to talk about mental health, I know I have a great platform of people who are willing to listen to what I have to say, and not going out and going crazy with it and cursing all the time and putting, such and such did this, y'all hear about that, who's that really helping, And it's not helping me. It might be attention, but it's not the attention that I want. If I get into a situation where we're up here today and, we want to talk about mental health, and you guys hear me tweeting a few weeks later talking bad about some athlete, and you're just like, well, hold on now. That person might need a hug, or needs some encouragement. How is that helping anybody in that situation? So again, I try to use that tool for good, but even though you try to use it the best of your capability, it can definitely hurt. There's been quite a few times where I've gone on social media and posting a few training videos and whatnot, and all of a sudden I just hear, or you see like one comment out of 100 great comments, you see one comment that says, "I don't know why you've been training. You're never gonna break the world record." I just wanted to show them I'm cool. Just ran really fast in practice. Just wanted to share it with y'all. You guys are the one who said you wanted more content like this. It's crazy. It's like, dang, they be in your head, they'll really be screaming out your failures and whispering your accomplishments. Like, you can have that one comment and it just messed up all those great 100 comments that you saw and read. It's like, but you could only see that one. And it's very hard to get yourself into a mindset of that's somebody's opinion, and you can't change their opinion, or maybe you can, but how is that going to help you? You have to be confident within yourself to know that their comment does not define you as a person. And again, going to Deja's comment about you don't know the story behind a lot of pictures. That's very true. I go on TikTok now and I see before and afters of how easy it is to use apps for Photoshop. And I'm just like, that should be illegal. That's catfishing 101. I've seen the show. That's illegal. If I met you in real life, I would call the cops on you because I don't know you. So it's a tool, and knowing how people use it, you just have to be smart about how you navigate it and what limits you put on yourself with social media and how you go about it.
So how do you know when it's become too consuming? What is that point like? And how do you identify it?
Go on social media and you've been on there for probably the 5th time in the last 3 minutes.
Yeah. That's a lot.
Looking for someone to reply back to your comment because your validation is coming from how many likes is coming from that one comment. Like, yeah, this is a great comment. I want to see people go off. This deserves 200 retweets right here. 5 minutes later, all right, it's at 0. 3 minutes, still at 0. It's crazy. I'm gonna make another tweet. What is that another tweet gonna do? It's gonna take you from 0 to 0. 0 times 0 is still 0.
So to really think it through with reason and rationale, and also, I imagine, identifying how you feel
Exactly.
in that process. Gracie, do you have any advice to share regarding social media?
I think when you find yourself doubling down on like a retweet or a comment, like we've all been there.
Oh.
But that's orange to red flag for sure.
Don't support the griefers. It's literally a whole map about, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but for anybody who's seen South Park, there is a map that tells you if you have the person who makes the comment, then you have the person who attacks the first person, but it's really not about that first person. It's about them trying to get a reaction out of everybody else.
Yep. Yeah.
And then it just starts a chain reaction. It was never about the first comment. It was always about them trying to get you mad about that first comment.
Yeah, that's where it starts. Then that's the spiral from there. Like everything, right? I think social media can be a beautiful and wonderful thing, and it can also be, as I think everybody knows by now, super toxic. But that's the same as like too much training. Even that, like train too much of it, like that's how people get injured. So, too much of a good thing does exist. And I think that, there's a lot of exposure and good things to come from social media. Like the amount of people that I've been able to connect with, that can be so beautiful. But you can also connect with anyone for better or worse. And I read something interesting that like when you're reading, those like rude comments, because you read it in your own voice, it is particularly hurtful and it sounds like, that little voice inside of you. So I'll post something and someone will be like, you were better when you were younger. But I read it in my own voice, and that is, a sport like skating with such like a small longevity, like I'm really geriatric for my sport at this point. And so when I read that, comment in my own, like that's one of my fears. And so sometimes when I get those comments or like whatever people want to say, I'm like, I read it, and then it hurts, and then I feel bad about it. But then I think, okay, if somebody said this though to my face, which they rarely do, would it bother me the same, or would I like laugh at them, or would I be like, okay, like let's relax? Like no one would say that. No one would walk up to you and say that, and if they did, it wouldn't haunt me the same as when I like read it and it's kind of in my own voice. But I've had to limit, especially during like, I can't believe you ever had your notifications on. That is so brave. I turn those off immediately. I'm not even really like on Twitter anymore, but during like difficult times, I just really step away from it. For a couple years ago, I think like right after the Olympics, a lot of people on Twitter like to call me Voldemort, which like Voldemort from Harry Potter, it's creative. Like it's good. I was kind of mad, like I didn't think of it, or like disgraceful golds, like another good one. And like now in hindsight, they're funny. Like, those are creative, those are hilarious. But at the time, and when I was even younger than Olympics, like for a 16-year-old to read that, it was devastating. I was down bad after some of those, and that's when I knew like to take a break. Like when random people tweeting out a sentence or two about me is like altering my whole day or how I feel about myself, or it's like going to affect my training. Let's take a break. Let's step back. Like this is, and as you kind of said, social media is really everyone's highlight reel, like Instagram specifically. So if you're comparing your day-to-day life to someone's, meticulously curated highlight reel, that's a setup for like feeling real bad about yourself. So once I kind of realized that, I would never post, like a lot of the stuff I posted were my highlights and all the things that I wanted to share. And when I realized other people are doing that as well. But I do think there is a trend in social media of content that's more real and more honest. Like I think we are leaving that phase of like the heavily like face-tuned or like just really kind of fake and like really like the captions that you can tell like they edited those. Like those are that wording was like they spent like a lot of time on this entire crafted post. And I think there is a shift towards stuff that's more real and more honest and more relatable. And I think that that's a great and beautiful thing. And I think we're going to see a lot of more, I think social media will become a more positive place because of it.
Well, this is all really great advice. I'd like to check in to see if we have any questions. Not sure where I'm going. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for your authenticity and that very authenticity that I agree is going to make social media better as it goes, but it's going to take a while. You've all talked about being seen, heard, having people that you could go to that you really trust to hear you. So for all of the people who are with us today and watch this and are thinking about, how can I make sure that this athlete that I care about really feels that? Because I am listening, I do care about what they're going through, but I feel like I don't know how to transmit that well. Besides remembering not to jump to fixing, which is a great point that you made, could you each talk about what really feels like empathy to you? When you go to someone and you say, I'm having a hard time, what specific words or facial expression or quiet or what makes you really feel, okay, I'm in a safe place with a person who's listening?
I guess I could talk about it first. Personally, I feel that the best way to do that is genuinely having a conversation. This isn't a conversation about how to fix it. This isn't a conversation about, going back in the past. This is a conversation breaking down how you feel. When we have our family discussions, it usually ends, it starts very hostile. Usually one person is very angry at the other or has passive aggressively been angry at the other person. And it starts with, how are you feeling? What are you feeling to this issue? And one person will go and the other person will go. And they're like, okay, why do you believe that you're feeling these emotions? And going from there, you get them to break down their own emotions. And it's very hard because you have to be pretty self-conscious to be able to do it very quickly, of course, but even getting that idea into their head of why do I feel like this? Why do I feel like I haven't accomplished something even though everybody is telling me that, I did something great? Why is it still not an accomplishment to me, And then going even further is like, asking more questions like, if you did get the gold, do you feel that it would have been that much better? Or, what did you learn from the situation? Or how can we fix this going forward? Or little things that you feel that would help the environment, is there something that I can do that would make you feel more comfortable? And sometimes they might not even know what makes them feel more comfortable. But even having the conversation multiple times so that it becomes normal, that they feel that, oh, I've had this once, now I've had it twice, now I start to feel like I can trust this person because whenever I come to this person, I feel that they're listening to me and not trying to, just come at me from the sport aspect.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Noah on that as well, but also like validating and also being vulnerable yourself. So sometimes I see my coach as my superior and the person who's in charge, and we kind of have like this power imbalance, but then whenever we have conversations, we're able to come down the same level and be both very open. Sometimes he's not as open, which is fine, but knowing that he can be vulnerable with me makes me feel more comfortable being vulnerable with him and to continue that conversation and keep it very open, and makes me want to come back even more. Like, I can have this conversation with you because you've opened up to me a little bit, so now I can feel like I can completely open up to you.
I agree,
Yeah.
100%.
And I think when it comes to noticing like any kind of change of behavior, I think is, a huge indicator. And a lot of times, like the difference that different caregivers or people in my life, the big difference between if it was very helpful or not is, as a like type A, like just constantly go person, if I start like not showing, like just start getting like a little later to the rink. Like I'm not showing up maybe on time, or I'm not showing up with the same energy, or, let's say like I do like my program run through, if normally I do the run through and then I'm like, no, like let's do that section again, or let's do these jumps again. If I'm struggling to keep that energy throughout the whole session, these are, just the change of behavior. So the coaches that said, oh, like, why are we being lazy? Or like, why are you late? Like, you've just been late all week. Didn't make it feel like it was a safe space to bring it up, but the coaches or caregivers that said like, hey, is something going on? Because, I've noticed you've been a little bit late all week, and like that first session is getting shorter and shorter, or I noticed that you haven't had the same enthusiasm when it comes to training, or like what is going on like in here and here, that's causing you to not work as hard as normal, or is causing you to not be as interested in training anymore. And I think the difference between that and because sometimes depression or anxiety, people can be comfortable with it if it manifests in the way that they understand it. So like everyone is really supportive of depression if it's after like some sort of event that they perceive as tragic enough. And if it's like crying, like mascara running down like in the shower. But if, your feelings of depression are manifesting as, what's perceived as being lazy, underachieving, or even if it's, irritability or like a temper, suddenly no one is like comfortable. Once it starts, affecting their relationship with you, it's no longer comfortable, and like then it becomes clear we live in a world that doesn't really understand mental health. So the people that took the time to think, is this super high achieving athlete actually just suddenly lazy? Or is maybe something else going on that is like, or is this symptom, like are these symptoms of something else? And the people that were able to take a beat and like think about that were the ones that helped me the most, because they saw through some of the like superficial symptoms, and I felt safe talking with them because they weren't yelling at me or picking on me or just suddenly I'm just like super lazy, just out of nowhere, right? Like, because that, like the last, 10 years have shown you that I'm lazy, not safe, because they don't get it. Like we're not gonna match up on this. And yeah, that stuff like that made all the difference. So like little changes of behavior, little changes in attitude, things that might not seem big, but there's no harm in investigating. Yeah, maybe I just was having a lazy week. Like maybe that is the case, but there's no harm in investigating. And some people with mental health especially feel like, oh, I didn't know if it was my place to say. Well, like if you were looking at me like in a casket, if I had truly decided to check out early, would you have wished that you said something? Or were you just like, how is it in your comfort zone? Because like, right? I think everyone wishes that they would have said something.
Well, we have about 5 minutes left, so if there's one more question, we can, sure, go ahead. We have a microphone coming.
So I know you guys talked a lot about how like physical injuries are easy to understand for athletes because they happen all the time, and how there's a big team for physical injuries, but there wasn't really anything for the mental health issues. I'm gonna call them injuries, the mental health injuries. What would you have wished was on that team for mental health when it popped up, since there wasn't really anyone around when you hit the super low points?
I mean, for me, I felt like that there was probably like some of those resources there, but like if someone like blew out their ankle, blew out their knee, and you, like you're in GB or whoever around you, like they don't say like, oh, like you should get that checked out, and then like walk away, right? Like they help bring the resources to you. They help connect you with the top docs, the top specialists, and a lot of that legwork is done, and anything less than the best, like you wouldn't just walk into like any with any urgent care or any hospital to get your ACL repaired. Like they would want the top doctor that specializes in athletes and like would issue like a full return to play situation. And like with mental health, although I know that, there are some resources available, it's like, oh, you should see someone about that. Like one of the first people I talked to, like I Googled therapists near me, like on my own phone and on Psychology Today, and like just started randomly like calling or emailing people until I found someone I liked that like may or may not have had like a history with sports, or I found like, especially maybe if I was having some like, I wanted to see like a sports psychologist, they sent me like a list of one, and they were like, oh, well, like this is like our guy if you like want to talk to him. But I wasn't asked if I was comfortable with a male. Like, were we going to hit it off? Like, is there a female available? Maybe, it was just kind of like a one and done. Like, oh, this is our guy over here. Like, you can call him. End of discussion. So I think helping athletes connect those dots and like get the help that they need would be great. Because if an athlete tore, again, like their ACL or threw out whatever, and they just were like, oh, you should definitely get that looked at. Yeah. Okay, like 911, like what?
I definitely want to piggyback off of that. I agree with you 100%. And even going past that, initial, now you've been healed from your injury, but have you been healed from your mental injury? A lot of people don't understand that you're really going through two injuries at the same time. You're going through the physical and then the mental. a lot of people, when they come back to their sport, they have PTSD from that injury. They will actually get so scared of being able to compete because they don't know if that injury is completely healed. So they're scared to go 100% back to where they were. And that's something you have to actually go to therapy for, or at least talk to somebody who professionally knows about this. You know, talking to your coach, yeah, you could talk to your coach, and he, you know, I really have to give kudos to almost every coach out there who is being a therapist for their athlete, because that's not their job title. It's really not. And yet they're literally shouldering the weight of a therapist on their back. And they don't have all the answers. They didn't go to school for that. But they do know that their athlete is not acting the same as when they came back from this injury. And that's probably because they're too scared or too nervous or not confident enough to be able to go back into that sport and say, I am 100% or better than I was. You know, the doctor can tell you 1,000 times, yep, it's healed. It's healed. But in your mind, you're like, okay, we made that first step. Okay, good. We're good. Let's not get in that. But that's a whole traumatic event. That's not a normal behavior. You should be able to go out and walk like normal and be able to be confident when your coach said, hey, I want you to come through this time, or I want you to perform this action, that you can be like, okay, 100%, I can do it. But there is no resource that's out there. Like she said, you got that one person. You know, I've been on multiple world championship teams. I've been on Olympic teams. I've been on world youth, world juniors, and you got that one therapist. And props to that one therapist.
But yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, I got a guy.
Exactly, I have a guy. How do you
I got a guy for that. And it's just one dude.
It's one
Yeah,
dude, or maybe one female.
I completely agree. I even noticed in Tokyo, they only had crisis counselors. So I had to be in crisis to speak to someone. So I was asking, I was like, so how can I speak to someone? They're like, oh, are you in crisis? I was like, do I need to go stay on the balcony and say I'm gonna jump for you guys to get me the help that I need? And they're like, oh,
what's
no.
crisis, but then what's like too much crisis?
Exactly,
Like,
and so
It's the comfortable amount.
it's kind of like you said, you have that one guy.
it's the palatable amount of crisis.
Yeah, we had one person, but we have cycling, we have wrestling, we have basketball for just one person.
One Team USA,
So that's
which has
it.
the biggest team.
Yeah.
We're very proud to
And
bring
they
the
got a
biggest
guy.
team.
They got one
But
guy.
one person. But we had to put 4 or 5 crisis counselors. So trying to differentiate, you don't need to be in crisis to get help, because mental health is not linear. You can be anywhere within your mental health to be able to speak to someone. So I definitely agree with Noah and Gracie. There doesn't need to just be that one guy or that one crisis counselor that you need to be in crisis to use.
Well, I can relate to what you're saying in that I think it's an important message to pass on to the younger generations, that it's okay to want to feel comfortable with whoever you're working with, and it's okay desire to honor.
And that you don't have to be in crisis to seek any kind of therapy or like mental health like help. I think that's a huge one that you brought up. That you don't have to be looking over that balcony to, again, like qualify for help. This qualification system, I feel that is subtly in place so that your mental health or mental illness is valid. Like you can just go, anybody. You don't have
There's
to
no
ask,
qualification.
you can just go to therapy. You can just ask, like, you can unpack like an event from your childhood or like a work relationship, family stuff. You shouldn't have to be like after, like, I found like I've had PTSD, like not just from like coming back from an injury, but like coming back from a failure on a global stage. Like I was really showing symptoms of like PTSD in terms of like that next competition. I qualified for the crisis counselor. Where are they? I qualify, I am in crisis. If you have to be in crisis, like if we're already there, so many signs were missed. And like here, like starting with the younger generation, I think a lot like physical injuries, so many are preventable. Like there are a lot of things you can do to prevent injuries. Not all of them, obviously, but you know, the younger and the sooner that we can start saying like, oh, like you can just talk to someone. Like you don't have to qualify, and like you don't have to have anything like go wrong to have any of these like mental illnesses or like mental imbalances. Like you can, but just starting earlier. Because yeah, if you're looking over that balcony, a lot of people failed you on your journey to the edge of that balcony.
I agree.
Well, there's so many good points today, and the wisdom you shared and the openness you demonstrated by talking about your experiences are much appreciated by us at USADA, but everybody in the audience, I'm sure. And you've undoubtedly helped a lot of youth athletes and the people in their lives today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you so much, panelists and Allison, for so skillfully navigating that conversation. That's our opening panel today. We are so pleased for the opportunity to highlight some of the challenges, sort of set the tone for the questions we need to answer coming ahead today. I think one of the pieces that I really took away from this really heartfelt, genuine, and authentic conversation is that we don't have all the answers yet. We obviously have some work to do as a sport community. And I think for those of us who are sort of in the trenches, you know that there are a lot of really great folks doing really tremendous work, and that you're right, that one guy's carrying a big load. And so how do we build answers to that? How do we as a community support that effort? There is a lot of terrific work happening. We know it in the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic movement. We know it in youth sport. We know it in school-based sport. But we know there's more to do. And I think that's the conversation today. So now that we've highlighted where some of those challenges are, thank you again for your honesty, your integrity about your own experience. Now it's time to get down to work. It's time to get serious about what the solutions are. We've got some phenomenal experts that are going to come up, share their wisdom, share their outlook, share next steps, very practical and pragmatic steps forward. So now it's time to step away from the problem and start getting some solutions in place. Okay? You have about a 15-minute break for our in-person audience. We'll have coffee stations available for you, whatever you need to do for the next 15 minutes. Let's reconvene just before 11:30. For our virtual audience, tune right back in. We'll see you in a few.